issue of a different manner. Specifically, when it comes to the numbers here, he looks at it's harder than ever to get elected to the Hall of Fame. Now, specifically, we're going to dive into pitchers, but look at this. You would have thought, it's easier than ever. No, the bias goes against players from a more recent era, as that line graph beautifully illustrates. Let's bring in Mike right now to talk more about this column. And before we get rolling, I didn't realize you were doing a recital of Bing Crosby's Baby It's Cold Outside. I didn't mean to interrupt, Mike.
Well, that song hasn't held up very well, but yes, absolutely. We're going to do some caroling. We're going to get some spiked hot chocolate. It's going to be great.
I'm there for the eggnog. Let's get into the column first, as that line graph illustrated. Harder than ever to get into the Hall of Fame. Why is this?
Yeah, it's a couple of reasons. And I know the first thing people will think of when they see that is, okay, well, there's some recent players who aren't in yet. There's actually not that many. I think the only 4 players who were born after 1970 who are guaranteed to get in are Ichiro Suzuki, Pujols, Beltre, and maybe CC Sabathia. And that's it. I mean, if you look at that chart I had there, and that was of players who had at least 1,000 plate appearances or 500 innings pitched, to get rid of the cup of spiked coffee guys, 4.3% of players get to the Hall of Fame. But of everybody born since 1960, it's 1.8%. Like, we have really ignored a lot of players. Now, listen, part of it, PEDs. There's no doubt about that. Clemens should be in, Bond should be in. We don't quite know what to do with all that. Part of it is that the Hall of Fame limits writers to choosing only 10 names on the ballot, which may seem like a lot, but there's been a lot of years where there's 15, 16, 17 guys who are worthy of getting in, and you just can't pick them all. It's really unfair and unfortunate. And the third thing is, we don't know what to do with starting pitchers. No one's getting to 300 wins. I got a great number for you here. Clayton Kershaw, I think we agree, is going to be a Hall of Famer. In his career so far, he's got 25 complete games and 15 shutouts. Bob Gibson, in just 1968, had 28 complete games and 13 shutouts. Like, it's a totally different planet. It's hard to compare these starters to starters of years past.
Yeah, and specifically, let's dive into a starter in Johan Santana. Now, he's one of 13 pitchers ever, Mike, with 3 ERA titles, and maybe doesn't have the duration of some other pitchers in the past, but you look at his peak, he was awfully tough, and he's a guy that I believe you think should be in the Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, he was a one and done type. He got bounced from the ballot in his first year. I look at Santana, he's basically 2000s Sandy Koufax, right? Like, we all know Koufax didn't have a long career, but he had a great peak. He started out as a reliever, as Santana did. And what I've come to believe is that no matter what else you do in your career, if you win 3 Cy Young awards, you are absolutely going to get in, Clemens aside, because of the off-field stuff. Scherzer's going to get in. Everybody else who's won 3 Cy Young awards has already made it in. Well, Santana didn't win 3. He won 2, except that in 2005, when Bartolo Colon beat him, it was maybe the most egregious award in the history of awards. Our friend Jason Stark, writing at the time, not even now, at the time, said, I can't believe the writers focused on pitcher wins this much. Santana should have won that Cy, and that would have put him in. And it's really important that guys like him get in. There's only been 2 pitchers born in the last 50 years who are in the Hall of Fame, which is crazy to me.
All right, can you give me your Twitter handle now? Because every Dodgers fan, every old school baseball fan is going to be apoplectic that you compared Santana with Koufax. Give me the Twitter handle now. I'm not kidding.
Mike _Petriello. The underscore is important. Without it, you'll hit up some French-Canadian teenagers.
I can't wait to see all the tweets we get from this segment now, and that he's going to get. Next name is Billy Wagner. Now, he was a tremendous closer, Mike. We all know. Great fireballer, lefty, wonderful years of the Astros. What's your case for why Wagner should be in Cooperstown?
I understand why you may not be a fan of one-inning relievers in Cooperstown, and that's fine if that's the way you feel. Like, totally understood. I'd personally prefer to put like Dave Stieb or somebody in, But the fact is, we have closers into the Hall of Fame. Mariano Rivera obviously is in there. The guy I compare Wagner to is Trevor Hoffman. Hoffman sailed into the Hall of Fame for one word: saves, right? I look at saves as sort of like the reliever version of pitcher wins, which is to say I don't put a ton of value on them. If you look at Wagner, he has the highest strikeout rate in history of anyone who pitched as often as he did. And if you compare him to Hoffman, he's got an advantage in pretty much every single stat except for saves, which, again, I don't really care that much about. I really think Wagner belongs as one of the most elite closers of all time.
The strikeout percentage, opponent average, certainly is remarkable. You look at his ERA plus, is second at 187. So those are a couple of guys you'd put in. Clearly, you like left-handed pitchers. Are there other names out there you say, you know what, I wouldn't put them in, but maybe they should garner more recognition and consideration?
Yeah, what I did is I looked at all pitchers who were born between 1971 and 1980. I made that the decade of the 80s. There's only 2 pitchers from that time frame in right now. Pedro Martinez is maybe the best pitcher ever, and Roy Halladay, who is also a very good pitcher. And that's it. And I think CC Sabathia's got a good shot. He's not on the ballot yet. You can see he will be in a couple years. I think he ticks all the boxes. He's not a slam dunk, but I think he's going to get in. And if it's not him, who else? Like, I like Oswalt and Tim Pettit and Cliff Lee. Like, these are guys who deserve to gain some merit. Just if we're going to get up to these historical averages of guys who get in, of the best, cream of the crop from the decades they were born. I don't think most of those guys are going to get in, but I think we've come to realize we have to start treating starting pitchers differently. You can't just look at wins and innings and even wins above replacement, because they're not allowed to pitch in the same way that guys like Nolan Ryan or Walter Johnson once did.
Let me follow up on Pettit then specifically. Do you think that's a PED case? Andy admitted to doing it, said he only did it twice, or is that just his candidacy isn't strong enough to make it?
It's all of it. I look at his regular season case, and it's sort of borderline for me. And then I think you get a bit of a boost for the postseason stuff. Obviously, that's where he made a lot of his bones. And then a bit of a negative on that for the HGH stuff. I think he's a borderline candidate. I think he might get in. I think, the Yankee mythos right there might help him a little bit. And he was a great postseason pitcher. But he's not a slam dunk for me. I think Sabathia has a much stronger case.
I do love Sabathia. Certainly a gregarious lefty. It was successful in many different venues as well. Mike Petriello, terrific insight as always. Thanks for backing up the talk. And listen, I know your kids are young, but never too early to get them to start watching Bad Santa. So you got a couple of weeks till Christmas.
They're 5 and 1. So, yeah, maybe a little bit too early for